You're acting like a politician.
Joining me for insight and analysis this Sunday morning are political analyst John Ralston, Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report, Susan Page of USA Today, and former advisor to President George W. Bush, Alfonso Aguilar. Welcome to Sunday. It's Meet the Press.
From NBC News in Washington, this is Meet the Press with Chuck Todd.
Good Sunday morning, and what a week in politics. This is the week that Republicans are accepting the reality that Donald Trump isn't going anywhere. It's also the week that Democrats began contemplating the possibility that Hillary Clinton's email problems might actually derail her campaign. But let's start with Trump. It wasn't the promised crowd of 40,000 on Friday, but 20,000 people sure did show up, and they found their way to a football stadium in Mobile, Alabama, to hear him and cheer him. So we decided to send our own Meet the Press producer to Mobile to embed himself with Trump supporters, watch with Trump supporters, beginning, middle, and end, to find out just what's behind the Trump surge.
He's just real. He's a real person. He's not politically correct, and I'm glad.
Well, I never have voted Republican in my life. I've been a Democrat.
You could vote Republican for Donald Trump?
There's a possibility. There's a possibility.
I think he's not exactly programmed. I mean, I think he believes what he says. He's a little rough, and I think people like that.
One thing is that we've got such a thin skin nowadays. He's showing us how to be tough again.
Welcome to both of you. This is Donald Trump's worst nightmare. You guys are who he's running against.
The
establishment of the establishment. Charlie Black, you heard those voices in the crowd, because that's what we're all been trying to get a handle on. Who are these people that are gravitating toward Trump? You just heard those voices. What does it tell you?
Well, there's a lot of frustration and anger in the country about the federal government and about politicians in both parties. And Donald has become a vehicle for that kind of frustration. So I do, based on your theme, believe that he's here to stay for a while, maybe through a few primaries, but he is not going to be the nominee. I mean, what Donald Trump is doing right now is running as a more likable Pat Buchanan with a protectionist, nativist platform that will not sell to a majority of Republicans.
Is it depend on what candidate you are, depending on what you should do, or do you think this is that all of them need to change their strategies?
Oh, no, it depends on who you are and where you are in the race. And, you know, for some people, to attack Trump right now is a good way to get attention. For Jeb in some ways is the front runner, although not really in the polls right now. So the two of them are the two front runners at the moment, and for them to get into it a little bit makes good sense. But listen, the other thing about Trump's candidacy is these folks who are angry and frustrated and are coming out to see him are conservative. Wait till they learn that the guy's been a Democrat longer than a Republican, that he's advocated for things like partial birth abortion, universal health care run by the government, and that you can't trust what he says on issues.
You know, I hear that, but why do I have a feeling that doesn't impact some of these conservatives? Because I think about Mobile, Alabama.
They don't know yet.
Well, they may not know, but they're also former Democrats, Alex.
It impacts a hunk of the Republican Party, but only, I think, about 25, maybe a little more than that percent. The real appeal for Trump is that he is a manly candidate. It's not his conservatives. We know these are gladiatorial contests, right? Who is strong enough to bring order to a country in a world that's spinning apart? Kathleen Parker once wrote that Barack Obama was our first female president. Bad news for Hillary, because he's all about soft power and dialogue and, you know, crossing red lines. Donald Trump is the reaction to that. But at the end of the day, he is a big government Republican. He doesn't fit our party.
Listen, I am a friend and admirer of Donald Trump's, but he's not suited to be president, and he will not be president.
But he is making the other candidates look small. And then again, when the world is spinning apart, you want somebody to grab the reins. The other guys are going to have to grow here. You want to cast a big vote, not a small one.
Well, it's an interesting challenge for them. I thank you both. And I have to say, I'm going to start with you this week, because one thing Donald Trump did is he threw the issue of birthright citizenship front and center, and he made the entire campaign have to react.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, we knew immigration was going to be an issue in this campaign, a top issue. It was in the last presidential cycle. But I don't think candidates expected that so early on they would have to detail their position on immigration. And by Trump coming out calling for an end to birthright citizenship, mass deportation, they have to express their views. Now, this is an opportunity for some to show that they disagree with Trump, that they want to be constructive on the immigration issue, and in that way get support from Latino voters if they become the Republican nominee, or they can choose to take the other path and not say anything, or even worse, agree with Trump. And if that happens, they're doomed in the general election.
Let me point out one person, Scott Walker, I noted earlier, he didn't know how to handle this.
Well, on immigration, we don't know what Scott Walker thinks, because he was for a path to citizenship, then he was against. On birthright citizenship, it seemed that right after Trump said he wanted to end birthright citizenship, Walker came out and said, I agree with that. And let me tell you, people were looking at Walker saying, this is a conservative candidate who's viable. After that comment, I don't think he's viable with Latino voters in the national election. I think he's done.
Hey, Susan, I just did an entire segment there with this assumption that Trump's not going to be the nominee. We are all, I think, of the mindset Trump's not going to be the nominee. Should we stop that?
I think that we've been wrong from the start about Trump and the nature of his appeal and the ceiling that he's got. He's disproved the idea that his gaffes, the things that we see as gaffes, would undermine him. That hasn't happened. So I think it's still unlikely he's the nominee. I think it is no longer inconceivable that he's the nominee.
I think people are going to have to decide whether they want someone who can say, well, she's fat. Yeah, and I'm so good looking. Or she's stupid. Or I'm rich and I'm smart because I'm rich. We have to decide whether we want sort of empty platitudes or whether we're going to look at substance. And I think for Donald Trump, basically, conservatives have to decide if he's a fake conservative or not. And I think truly he is a fake conservative because he's been on every side of every issue in the last 5 years.
Do you feel like you've made more sense of it?
No, I mean, I think that do I make sense of any of this? No. I think Susan's right that all of our assumptions have been sort of blown up in our face. But some of the we still have to go back to political physics. There are laws of gravity that still kick in at some point.
When?
And here, well, that's what we have to remember. Which
Apparently, we're Mars, not Earth anymore. The atmosphere is just different. Gravity is not quite as strong on this planet we're on.
At the end of the day, I think what you heard in that piece and what you're hearing from voters is they want to send a message. Right. At some point, they're going to have to cast a vote. And is a message more important to them than winning an election? Because that's going to be the choice. Is Donald Trump worth losing an election, a general election over? As a candidate, I think if the field narrows, which it will, that's going to be a tougher debate for him. It is also the summer. Right. Nobody's thinking about electability.
Okay,
nobody's thinking about
Amy,
November.
Washington.
I know.
Let me go to Nevada. Let me go to a guy in America.
Finally, you're talking to a real person.
I was just going to say, tell me what's happening in America, or at least, actually, Las Vegas is in America, but still, tell me to Nevada or Nevada, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think it was really interesting watching Alex and Charlie with you because they were so definitive. Trump is not going to be the nominee. No one wants to say, including people in our business, the real answer. I don't know. Nobody knows. This guy has defied political gravity, but his gravitational pull, as everyone is talking about, he's pulling these other Republican candidates to say things that are going to cost them in the general election. And the Walker example is the best. He's for, he's against. Then he comes out with the quote that you alluded to, Chuck. I don't know whether I'm for it or against it. Let's just talk about secure the border. So Trump is just drawing everything to him right now, and people just don't know where it's going because, as Susan points out, many of the assumptions early on have turned out to be wrong. He's not going to run. Oh, he won't last very long. It's performance art, etc. We don't know where it's going, Chuck. We really don't.
Look at you, bringing some reality check here. I don't know. Nothing wrong with that. Coming up, our other big story of the week. Could Hillary Clinton's email troubles actually derail her candidacy? We're still skeptical, but who knows? But first, here's what Donald Trump says about Hillary.
I think she's the worst Secretary of State in the history of our country.
One of the world's most dazzling cities. The 2016 Olympic Games from Rio on NBC.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. So I'm certainly well aware of the...
Governor Dean, let me start with you. The evolving answers here, at the end of the day, can you say that Hillary Clinton has handled this well?
I actually don't think the answers are evolving. I think they're steady as she goes. Look, this is, in fact, manufactured partly by a press that's bored and partly by the Republicans. Here's the deal. She did not break any rules. She did not break any policy. She may have sent stuff that was classified that wasn't labeled classified, and it is well known that the State Department and others are trying to get stuff classified after the fact. She can't be blamed for this. So I look at this as the usual press frenzy, the packed journalism, and I think it'll go away because there's no substance to it.
Well, you're going to hear a quote from Jerry Brown, Peter Hart, where he says, you know, this thing's like a vampire. This story won't go away, and she's got to figure out how to essentially find a way to just stab it and get rid of it. What could she be doing better?
Well, she's in a hide-and-seek period, and that's a terrible place to be because it's going to continue to evolve and evolve and evolve until she essentially ends it. She's a terrible front runner, but she is a marvelous candidate when she gets into the middle of the race. And there you see her intelligence, her experience, and her toughness. At this stage, it's all fumbles.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because then that would make an argument that says Joe Biden getting in the race might be the best thing to happen to Hillary Clinton. You've been involved in insurgent campaigns and in front-runner campaigns. So is there time for Biden to put together a competitive campaign?
Well, what it really comes down to is he's the happy warrior. He reaches the Reagan Democrats. He reaches across more than anybody else. The difficulty is, where's the opening on the field? And I think that's his real challenge. And, you know, 80% said they might vote for him. Only 45% want him to run. And the difficulty is, how do you find that space on the track? And that's what I think challenges him. You know, he has to get the dough where it's no go.
I'm going to leave the conversation there, Governor Dean. Peter Hart, we will watch and see. For more on the Clinton campaign, a bit in crisis this week, I was joined by a man who knows a thing or two about running for president himself, California Governor Jerry Brown. You were here in Washington in March, right when the kerfuffle about Hillary Clinton and the emails was happening, and somebody asked you if this was going to an issue that would just go away, and you cautioned, I don't know that. With these things, what makes a difference you often don't know until it unfolds, because nothing is just what it is. It's always in part of a larger context. Things unfold, things happen. Jerry Brown, March 2015. August 2015, she's still dealing with it. You were right. What should she be doing better?
Well, I don't know. This email thing, it has kind of a mystique to it. You know, an email is just an utterance in digital form, but it has some kind of dark energy that gets everybody excited. So I don't know how, it's almost like a vampire. She's going to have to find a stake and put it right through the heart of these emails in some way. But I don't think a leading candidate for president needs the advice of another politician. Generally, they don't follow it, and I think they know everything I can figure out.
Do you fully expect Hillary Clinton to be the nominee?
I don't make these expectations. I've been around politics long enough to know that, you know, that things are uncertain. I don't know. I think she's a good person. She's got a lot of experience, but the vagaries of politics that are such that I think expectations are worth about that.
Okay. So why wouldn't you jump into this race?
Because I've got a lot to do in California. We got fires that are burning. We have this budget still to be kept in check. And this is the 7th or 8th largest economy in the world. And I find it completely absorbing and challenging. And I've given myself to this job, and I'm going to be fully engaged in it.
A lot more from Jerry Brown. You can see the entire interview on our website, meetthepressnbc.com. Let me bring in the panel. John Ralston. The lawyerly answer there from Howard Dean, I thought was an interesting way. That's what every defense they've sounded off on. That's what it sounds like, a lawyer, not a political consultant.
I guess what I thought from the beginning on that, and I thought that was terrible for her that Governor Dean said that. But Chuck, it depends on what the definition of classified is, I think is what people out there in real America are thinking. Even if it wasn't classified, why did she have to do this? Was there sensitive information on there? Why did she have that on an insecure server? This is not, as Governor Dean said, a purely media manufactured story. Sure, the media has been all over it, but it's her handling of it. You know, someone should have given her this advice before that appearance in, by the way, Nevada, where she said, here's the first thing you shouldn't do, Hillary. Joke about it. Don't joke about it, because people, even if they don't understand all the nuances, they know it's serious. So don't say, wipe it with a cloth, because, you know, in this world now, that's going to go viral right away, which of course it did.
You're running as a political outsider. And
I
yet,
am a political outsider.
Well, I say this, but the last 7 years, an advisor to John McCain. You ran for the U.S. Senate. You worked at the NRSC, a fundraising arm for the Republican Party. That doesn't sound like somebody that sounds like somebody who's wanted to become a member of the professional political class.
No, I think it sounds like someone who believes this is a citizen government. It was always intended to be a citizen government. And so citizens have to be engaged in the process of governance and politics. We need more citizens in politics. We have too many professional politicians. And the vast majority of American people say, we're delighted you haven't been on the inside in Washington. We're delighted you haven't held elected office before. What all those experiences say is that I understand how the process works. That's important. I have relevant experience. Every single one of the problems I've just mentioned has been festering for 25 years, but what do politicians do? Every election cycle, they hold up some bright, shiny object. Oh, let's talk about birthright citizenship. Even if you like that idea, the chances of getting a constitutional amendment passed, the chances of having the 14th Amendment overturned by the Supreme Court are extremely small.
What do you do with the 11 million?
My own view is, if you have come here illegally and stayed here illegally, you do not have an opportunity to earn a pathway to citizenship. To legal status, perhaps, but I think there must be consequence.
You still have great admiration and respect for Hillary Clinton.
In many ways, I do. She's a hardworking woman. She's an intelligent woman. She has dedicated herself to public service. It is also true, however, that she has not trustworthy, that she has lied about some key things, Benghazi, her emails, her server, and she doesn't have a track record.
As a big charge. Why do you know she's lying on Benghazi?
Oh, for heaven's sakes. The night of the Benghazi attacks, we now know that the State Department and the White House knew this was a purposeful, pre-planned terrorist attack. Nevertheless, the next morning she went into the State Department and she addressed the American people and talked about a video that did not represent the values of this nation. Several days later, she said the same thing over the bodies of the fallen. What she should have said was, this was a purposeful terrorist attack and we will seek retribution.
You believe she purposely lied?
Absolutely, I do.
In your home state of California, the drought, the wildfires, more evidence is coming out from the scientific community that says climate change has made this worse. Not to say that the drought is directly caused, but it's made it worse.
You know what's also made it worse? Politicians, liberal politicians who stood up for 40 years as the population of California doubled and said you cannot build a new reservoir and you cannot build a water conveyance system. And so for 40 years, 70% of the rainfall has washed out to sea. That's pretty dumb when you know you're going to have droughts every single year, or every 3 years, let's say.
So the other day I asked Governor Jerry Brown to respond to that exact criticism you made. I said you blamed liberal environmentalists in California, specifically on dams and reservoirs. And this is how he responded.
I've never heard of such utter ignorance. Building a dam won't do a damn thing about fires or climate change or the absence of moisture in the ground and vegetation of California. So I think these people, if they want to run for president, better do kind of 8th grade science before they make any more utterances.
That's a lot of insults, but of course it makes no sense what he just said. It would be helpful if you were fighting fires to have more water.
She can say it was the dot-com bust and I was ousted in a boardroom brawl by a bunch of guys. That's all very good in the short term. But in the long term, that is a devastating issue for her. And I have to say, though, Chuck, for someone who says she's not a politician, boy, she was very good in that interview.
Right. Before we go, a little something fun. Let's put this up. It created a little viral meme here. Here's Jeb Bush, and as you can see, clearly Photoshop got the best of the Jeb Bush super PAC, Right to Rise. They have him standing there with two hands. One appears to be Jeb Bush's hand. The other one looks like the hand of an African American.
But the reality is that, look, they're afraid of Jeb because they know that he has good relations with the Latino community, that if he's the candidate, he will be very competitive with Latino voters.
Well, what Mike Murphy said to me is maybe more people will actually read it now.